Welcome to the Plant-Based Podcast. Did you know that plants are truly amazing? Not only can you grow them and eat them, you can also wear them, drink them, nourish your skin with them, and so much more. Let Ellen and Michael inspire you to love plants as much as they do, as they chat with the movers and shakers in this wonderful plant-based world. So, let's dig in.
This episode of the Plant-Based Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Cobra. The Cobra range of garden machinery is constantly expanding and offers the UK's largest range of lawnmowers. With a comprehensive lineup of quality and innovative petrol, electric, battery and cordless products to tackle any gardening task, Cobra is the newest evolution in garden machinery. Visit cobragarden.co.uk for your chance to win a variety of great Cobra products.
In this week's episode, I have cut the chains and let Michael loose. He has been virtually in a meeting with Benary, who are begonia breeders, and I'm really excited to listen to this one myself.
Yeah, well, you want to talk about plants in depth, you need a plant geek on the trail. So, yeah, it's really, really fun. We're going to talk about lots of different types of begonia. We're going to talk about how begonias can work for you in your garden space. And we're also going to find out how they're bred as well, and maybe find out a few little trade secrets here and there.
Basically, we're going to blast the begonia snobbery.
Absolutely, and about time, because, you know, both of us, we fight against plant snobs all the time. Yeah. And so anybody that comes at me saying that begonias are just some, you know, baby rainbow plant or something, you know, you can do one.
That is some serious tough talking. Let's hear what the breeders have got to say about it.
There's a begonia for everyone, whether you like them big, bold and brash, or if you like them a little bit more, you know, delicate and demure.
I like the big, bold, brash ones.
Yeah, go for it.
Flouncy, all the colours. Can't wait. Thank you, by the way.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you give it a listen as well. Right, so we have a really special episode here today. I'm actually with Benary, and they are a German breeding company. And today we're going to talk about begonias. And a lot of newbies to our gardening world here assume that begonias are just some leafy houseplant. But there is so much more to begonias. And you're actually looking at one of the longest flowering and most versatile summer plants that you can grow. And we're going to talk to 3 different people from Benary today. First up, we're going to talk to Dominic, who's the UK sales manager. We're going to talk to him about the history of the company. And then we're going to grab a couple of their breeders and talk to them about some of the plants that they're breeding, some of their potential plans for the future. I know they won't want to give too much away, but we're going to have a lot of fun. Part 2, as usual, we're going to talk about how it relates to the consumer at home. So how to grow begonias, where to grow them, what to do with them after they've stopped flowering. So first up, we've got Dominic. Morning, Dominic.
Good morning, Michael.
How are you doing?
I'm good, and you?
Yeah, it's 7 a.m. I'm not going to pretend it's not. But no, it's good to have you here today. How long have you worked with the company?
I started 2014, so it's nearly 7 years now.
Oh, cool. And were you were trained in horticulture or in something different before?
Well, I would say training in horticulture was about the last 7 years. It was a steady training.
And do you love begonias?
I do. I actually have some in my garden, so I really like to see them growing.
Excellent. So tell us about Benary then, because it's actually a global seed breeding company, which, you know, many consumers at home may not have heard of, because obviously you're behind the scenes creating a lot of the seed varieties that are then grown by various growers. So tell us a little kind of potted history about the company, please.
Yeah, sure. Benary was already founded 178 years ago in Erfurt, which is located in the eastern part of Germany. And after World War II, they moved to a small little town in the middle of Germany called Hanmünden, where it's still located. And ever since, Benary is a family-owned company. And nowadays, we sell more than 10 billion seeds per year into over 120 countries around the world.
Wow. Okay.
We also have different locations around the world, including a breeding station in Watsonville, California. In DeKalb, Illinois, we have a warehouse for our US market. And we also have a breeding station in Venhuizen in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. And recently, we have a joint venture in China. Mm-hmm. And nowadays we export more than 90% of our seeds in the world. And the United Kingdom, with its great history of gardening, is still one of our most important markets.
Mm-hmm. And you're the UK sales manager, so you obviously, in normal times, you would spend time in the UK talking to customers, kind of getting begonias into gardens, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That is excellent. So you must enjoy your job working with plants.
I do. I really admire it. And also traveling and meeting different people is always very nice.
And the trade shows, like we're missing the trade shows, aren't we? There's been virtual versions, but they're just not the same, are they? Because you need to talk to colleagues, contacts, kind of bounce around different ideas, and you don't get the same always on a Zoom call, do you?
No, it's definitely, we need to meet the people in person and see the plants in front of us. It's nice that we have the opportunity to show the people the plants through a Zoom call or something, mm-hmm. but it's not the same like standing in front of the plants.
Yeah, have you been doing some Zoom tours in the glasshouse to show varieties? Does that work?
Yes. Yeah, that works, I would say, pretty good. Our customers admire it. And it's in these times, I think it's a good way to at least show some of our new varieties or some of our range.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk more about the range throughout the episode. But what would be your hot shot for the new season? What is the begonia you're really looking to push the most in terms of your sales?
I have to say I really like the Illumination, which is not really new, but especially in the UK, it's a very important and well-known variety. So I hope that I can push the Illumination a little bit more. And of course, our big Begonia, which is one of our top. It's our top seller, and I like that plant a lot.
That's cool. I think with the Illumination, a lot of people have probably grown it without realizing, because it's kind of the leading trailing begonia with the big pom-pom blooms, isn't it? And in fact, many times sold under the name Apricot Shades, isn't it? So it's a really, really popular line. Of course, was big, and I think it's getting bigger all the time. More and more people are getting to know it. And we had one in the QVC studio, and people were shocked that this was the plant and how big it got. So there's a really bright future for big. That's an amazing invention by you guys.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Definitely. So we're going to talk a little bit about breeding. And are you going to handle some of that, Dominic, or are you going to hand over to Ulrika?
I will go hand over to Ulrika.
Yeah, okay, that's great. So we're going to talk about some of the varieties that you guys have bred over the years. So welcome to the podcast, Ulrika. You are a breeder at Benary, and you're breeding in the Simple Florens type, which are the kind of traditional bedding ones with the little kind of flowers, the water lily pad leaves, and also in the interspecifics. And that is where big comes into it, isn't it? So tell us a little bit about some of the varieties that you've bred and some of the most popular ones as well.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to say that our most popular varieties, that's our Queen tuberous Begonia nonstop, first introduced in 1972. Mm-hmm. So it's a quite old variety now, nearly 50 years old.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and Benary is a worldwide market leader in the field of begonias. Mm-hmm. Just an example. Our Illumination series is one of the best trailing begonias, and we are also market leader with our Begonia Big, mm-hmm. which does what the name says, will get huge.
We get a lot of love for Illumination and Big at the moment, aren't we? But you mentioned nonstop. I love nonstop because it does perform, and it's another one that does what it says on the tin. So nonstop. Mm-hmm. doesn't stop blooming. Amazing. So how does breeding work? There's different methods, isn't there? How do they all work, please?
Yeah, you have to decide between different methods. So one is line breeding, and also hybrid breeding is quite common. And what we use here for the begonia breeding, that's hybrid breeding. That's classical traditional breeding method. And very important is that Benary stands for a breeding without GMO. So we don't breed genetically modified plants. But of course, we try to involve modern breeding techniques in our approaches. So like macro techniques, in vitro techniques, and we also try to stay in contact with other institutes or university who deal with plant breeding or plant sizes or other parts of horticulture.
Okay. And in terms of hybrid breeding, this is one that in my early days at Thompson & Morgan, I did some breeding with the Bascom plants in the very early days when I was sort of doing training in different areas. And that was a hybrid breeding. So can you just tell us how hybrid breeding works?
Yeah, so I think that the people should not be afraid when they hear that they have a hybrid, that the product is a hybrid, because hybrid only means that it is a crossing product of mother line and the father line. And we do it here, or it's quite common to do it with a hand pollination. And to give you just a short example, when you want to have a hybrid or a variety which consists of special traits, for example, you want to have a red and big flower, then maybe you choose a mother line which has the color, the red, which gives the red, and then you cross it with the father, and this father gives a big flower, and then you combine both, then you have, of course, a nice hybrid with expected traits. And
is the pollination easy? Because obviously you need to do it by hand. There must be a lot of kind of detailed work there.
Yeah, that depends. That depends on the plant itself. So when you have, sometimes it is necessary to do a castration. So you have to remove when you want to pollinate. Also, you give the pollen from the father. Yeah, you give the pollen from the father to the mother. So you have to remove the fertile flowers from the mother plant to avoid a contamination with the wrong pollens. And that's a little bit tricky, but then it's not so complicated. And sometimes, it depends on the plant. You also have to do a castration in the flower. Yeah. When you have a flower which contains a pollen inside, then you have to remove the pollen also. Sometimes you only have to, when you have a fertile flower, a sterile flower, then it's easy. You only have to remove the fertile flowers. But when you have a flower which contains both, then you have to castrate really and to remove the pollen.
Okay.
That's very difficult.
Yeah. What would be like for people trying to breed at home? What would be the easiest plant to work with, would you say, if someone just wants to have a little play?
Yeah, I think an easy is it when you have a mother line which is a sterile. Then it's quite easy. Then you only have to do the pollination with the father, and you don't have a contamination with the wrong pollen, and you have no cell things inside.
Okay, so
you really can combine both.
Okay, I'm wondering if, like for people at home, like poppies, aquilegia might be quite fun to start working with. If they, I just think it's quite fun for people to create plants at home on an amateur level, isn't it? So
you can try it, of course. It is possible.
Yeah.
Also, it's also possible just to use a brush. You can also use a brush and do the pollination with a brush.
Okay, cool. Just manually. So cool. Okay, well, we're going to talk about one of your best sellers and obviously your kind of flagship plant for the last few years, and that is Begonia Big. And there are a lot of species of begonia around the world. There's 2,000, and even in the news the other day, they were naming a couple more, weren't they? So talk us through Big and how that was created, because that was actually created for the anniversary as well, wasn't it? And given a very special name.
Yeah, so I think as you already mentioned, it's not so easy to work with the begonia because you have a lot of species, and we had the luck that out of this incredible genetic pool, we had the breeding breakthrough with our interspecific begonia Big some years ago, and that's also something that you have in your mind, that sometimes you also need luck, when you breed. That you pick out the right plants and the right species. Yeah. But of course, it is quite a lot of, or it's quite hard and a lot of work to breed. So breeding takes very long, and in general it takes 5 or 10 years to breed a new variety, and before you can produce a hybrid or create a hybrid, a lot of selection work is needed. And here for hybrid breeding, it is very important to do a good line development. To really have the good mother and father lines.
Okay. And then it's about a lot of observation, isn't it? Because you'll often get hundreds of offspring. You've got to grow those out in a big area, and then you've got to really put your close glasses on to see those differences. And I've been working at Thomson & Morgan for almost 20 years, and we were breeding lots of different plants. So I did a lot of kind of observation walks. And I remember with Buddleia, for example, we grew, 10,000 Buddleia in a field, and we would walk up and down and look for ones that had any difference. And it takes a long time, but you kind of train your eye to do that. And it's really fun as well. But sometimes with breeding, you say it takes up to 10 years, but sometimes what you're trying to create won't work, will it? Sometimes you cannot make it happen. That must be frustrating, right?
Yeah, that is frustrating. Yeah, that's true. But it's really, really a lot of work. And the thing is really that you do a lot of crossings, thousands crossings, and you have a lot of hybrids, but at the end, only a handful of hybrids that are the ones which you think are the best in this year. And then you check it the next years, and then you only 10 are better. So it is hard.
Definitely. But I mean, you're working with begonias that flower quite quickly from seed compared to if you're working with a bulb or a shrub. You would be talking about 20 years, even 30 years.
When you work with trees or with apple breeding, that's definitely hard.
So tell us a little bit more about the screening process, the kind of selection. How does that work? How can we kind of get that keen eye to notice any differences?
So we try to do the screenings all over the world in different locations worldwide. So we do the evaluation of our material in the greenhouse. How does it perform at the field? We check how it is performed in different pot sizes, in baskets or in containers. And we also try to find out how the varieties fit under different environmental conditions. So how they perform under hot climate, under wet climate, under dry conditions. So, we have to check a lot.
Okay, and of course, when you select those plants, it's not like you're selecting one ultimate type of plant. There's different tastes in different regions, isn't there? So say in America, what type of flowers do they like compared to Chinese or UK? What differences do you find in how you're selecting for those markets?
So different customers have different preferences. So in the US, they like it big and bold, so nothing can be big enough. And for example, for the Chinese market, it is important to have something with red color.
Okay.
And in the UK, the people prefer pastel tones.
Okay.
Soft tones, light pink, something like that.
It's interesting, isn't it? All the differences, and of course you've got to account not for people's personal tastes, but also the different climates as well, because you're obviously you're dealing global, so you're talking dry, humid, warm, cold. So you do the testing all around the world in different locations, I imagine. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, because and we also have always in our minds that we have climate change. Yeah. But I think the climate change, that's something what we breed or what we consider automatically, because also in Germany we have climate change, and that's something what we still have in our mind.
Okay. So obviously breeders, it's not just the breeding. You have to know your markets. You have to look to the future. You also, when it comes to trends, would you say that you're creating the trends or you're following the trends?
I think we also we have to be quite creative, and we should also have the markets in our mind. But I think a breeder can maybe create a trend, but it's also a combination of everything. So it's also what the customer wants, and also what our sales team can offer. So I think it's both. But of course, a breeder needs to know what can be common in the future, and should have a lot of material in the pipeline.
Okay. But
and also it can happen that if you breed something a few years ago, what was not interesting, but maybe in 5 years it will be interesting.
So what do? You just keep those in a library somewhere, or how do you make sure you don't lose the plant?
Yeah, because we have the possibility also to keep our seeds and also our plants, so that we can also give that we have something from our pipeline. So that is possible.
Yeah. Okay.
But not things which are that they're interesting 30 years ago. So
yeah. Okay. And you must have good kind of liaison with the sales staff. Are they obviously in the breeding house quite often, kind of looking around, making sure they direct the program where they see the market going, for example?
Yeah, and it's also important for us also to be in contact also with producers of the young plants. So it's also necessary that we look in this part. And we also need, of course, the help from our sales team and also the help from our marketing team to breed really things what the market want and what the customer want.
Definitely.
Yeah. And we also need to know what do the competitors. So we also try to be faster than the competitors, of course.
So it's also important. Out the spies to see what other people are breeding.
Yeah.
I have to say, when I was at Thompson & Morgan, I really liked to visit companies and visit their breeding programs and to get behind the scenes and talk to the breeders, because sometimes you would talk to the sales staff and it sometimes like the story wouldn't quite go through to the breeders the way you intended. So I really like to get behind the scenes and kind of notice all the stuff that's going on and hope to influence that in some way, or maybe I was just nosy.
Yeah. We should be quite up to date. So
definitely. Yeah. Okay, so obviously bringing a new plant to market is a team effort. It's not just about breeders, it's about sales staff, it's about the production as well. And of course, you're doing this all on a worldwide basis as well. So, Oh my gosh, it's amazing. In part 2, we're going to talk more about how you grow begonias and where you can plant them. But before we hand over to Hannes, can you just tell us briefly, where would you plant begonias outdoors? They're pretty versatile, aren't they, Ulrika?
So I would like, I also tried to, I planted one time begonias at the balcony. Yeah, and that works pretty good.
Yeah.
Because at the moment I don't have a garden, and what I like, that's also to have begonias in a pot or in a container. Because they like the hot conditions also on the balcony.
definitely. So, because we often think of begonias just liking the shade, but they're actually okay in the sun as well, aren't they?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So,
also, for example, the Semperflorence, that's a good begonia for a warm place and a shiny place at the balcony.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Well, before you go, I just want to pick your brains on Semperflorence, actually, because what would you say is like what would you love to happen to Semperflorence? Like, could you ever make them fragrant, for example? Like, what would be like the holy grail?
Oh, yeah, maybe that's a nice option, yeah, to have something like that. Yes, of course.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yes, there are options to do that.
Or different colors, because like we've obviously got reds, pinks, whites. So it'd be nice to see some different colors, but I know it's not always easy with these plants. And of course, yeah, you've got a lot of different begonias to deal with. And of course, you're also working on interspecific, which is big as well. So hopefully we'll see some more interspecifics over the years as well.
Yeah. And we always are looking what is in the gene pool, and also what we also want. Maybe it's another color, of course. Maybe when you have a Semperflorence with yellow colors, maybe that's interesting, or with something like blue.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That
would be nice.
Oh my God, the moment where you see something unusual and different on the breeding site must be an amazing moment.
Yeah.
Do you scream?
Yeah.
And just run and
but it's not so easy. I think it's not so easy with the colors. That's not so easy.
Definitely. But we can always dream, huh?
Yeah. Why not?
Oh, thank you, Ulrika.
And you try to be the first one when something is new.
Oh, thank you. That was really great to talk to you a little bit more about begonia breeding. And that was part 1. And we're going to move to part 2 in a moment after a short interval. But remember, you can look on the website, theplantbasedpodcast.net, and we've actually got the top 5 begonias on there. So you'll be able to hop on the website and find out even more about big, non-stop illuminations, super cool, and groovy and funky. There are lots of different varieties to choose from. All of that information is on the website, but we'll be back shortly.
Hello, it's Donna from Pretty Cactus here. I'm here on the Plant-Based Podcast to talk to you all about houseplants. This time, we're going to talk about houseplants in your bedroom. There's a number of reasons why you should put plants in your bedroom. First of all, they look pretty, and everybody likes a pretty-looking bedroom. But plants also have a number of health benefits. They have the natural ability to purify the air in your room, keeping harmful elements out of your lungs and replacing it with breathable oxygen. When you spend 8+ hours a night sleeping in your bedroom, it can actually help you long term by making sure that the air that you're breathing is nice and clean. Getting the right plant for your bedroom isn't that easy. It's not just a case of picking any old plant off the shelf in the garden centre. You need to go for one that continues to photosynthesize 24 hours a day. This means that it continues to put out oxygen whilst you sleep. There are a number of plants that don't do this and actually can have a detrimental effect to your sleep. So here's a few plants that you could be putting into your bedroom which will help you breathe at night. The snake plant, one of my favourites. It's a good, sturdy, air purifying plant and they're easy to come by. They're actually also known as the bedroom plant, and the reason behind this is because of their ability to keep photosynthesizing throughout the night and to clean the air in your bedroom while you sleep. Other options are cacti and succulents. These come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, so it means you can pop one on a shelf. You could have a statement plant standing in the corner of the room. They're easy to care for too, so you don't actually have to remember to water them too often. But if you fancy something a little bit more leafy, a great beginner-friendly plant is a spider plant. It's one of the best plants for cleaning the air in your home, and it's great for any beginner plant parent, as it doesn't take too much care. It's going to be a real hard worker to keep your bedroom air clean overnight. So there you have it. There's some plants that are good for your bedroom and why. You can pick these up now from prettycactus.co.uk. I'll see you again soon on the Plant-Based Podcast. Bye!
So we've had some houseplant tips from Donna, but how about a plant that you can grow on pretty much any windowsill of your home, which is going to give you flowers for up to 10 weeks? The plant we're talking about is Kalanchoe. Or is it Kalanchoe?
Kalanchoe.
However you say it, this is an amazing plant that you can use in many, many different ways. Have you grown Kalanchoe before?
Yeah, I have. I've had quite a few, actually.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you a very random story that I remember it from a rhyme that I made up when I was learning about plants doing my RHS studies. You know, like when you brain map and think about blah, blah, blah. So anyway, my sister lives in Katy. There's a Kalanchoe Flaming Katy, and I had a rhyme in my mind, Kalanchoe, and here we go, we're off to Flaming Katy.
What a great song. I think every plant should come with its own little kind of jingle, shouldn't it?
It should do, right? Anyway.
But do you know what? The colour is back. And I think in terms of houseplants, flowering houseplants have not had much time in the limelight of late. So why not look at Kalanchoe? Because not only have you got the single flowered varieties, but many of the ones available are now the double flowered types as well. Yeah. And they flower for weeks upon end.
Yeah.
And they look like dinky little roses. They're really gorgeous. And of course, Kalanchoe is a succulent as well. So pretty easy to grow.
They're so pretty. They're so vibrant, so many colours. And like you said, because they're succulents, they're so easy.
I know. You can forget to water them for, I don't know, a month. Yeah.
And you can propagate them real easy too. You do.
Absolutely. But it's not just those kind of, the standard shaped flower ones, but also the Magic Bells ones. You used to have one in your downstairs room, didn't you?
Beautiful Magic Bells. And it's like tons and tons of little vaguely blush kind of colour flowers that flower for a really, really long time. And they are a showstopper. Yeah. People do, definitely. They come in and they do say, wow, look at that, what's that plant?
Oh, well, they're an easy house guest. They'll also help you to sleep better as well because they're nighttime oxygenators, which means they release oxygen at night and could help to promote a deeper, more restful sleep.
Wow, I never knew that. And did you also know they will grow indoors and outdoors too?
Yeah, and they're a great plant for outdoors in a patio pot because, of course, if you forget to water it, it's going to be absolutely fine. To be honest, Kalanchoe are better with less water than more, aren't they?
Definitely. That's definitely one of those ones you do not want to overwater. Also, they are, of course, really easy to find. You can pick them up almost anywhere.
Definitely. They're not so exotic that you need to get them from really obscure growers on online or eBay. Yeah. But if you'd like to find out more about Kalanchoe, then why not look at the company Always Kalanchoe? You'll find them online at www.kalanchoe.nl, or you can follow them on Instagram, which is Always Kalanchoe.
Brilliant. I'm going to go follow them.
So we're back in part 2 where we're going to look at how begonias can grow for you in your outdoor space, whether that is big garden, small garden, just a terrace or patio pot. Perhaps there's even some you can grow in window boxes or on the windowsill indoors, perhaps. We're here with Hannes, who is the breeder of begonias at Benary, and he specializes in the tuberous types. So this would be the non-stop series. This would be the ones that create that tuber at the end of the season, which ultimately is much better value for the consumer because you can grow them in year 2 and year 3 and year 4 and so on. So Hannes, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, very good. How long have you worked with Benary?
I'm working for Benary now for nearly 2 years.
Ah, excellent. And you've been breeding in other plants previously, or?
No, my background is actually pretty diverse. I'm a trained nematologist, and I also worked in the pesticide business. I'd say I worked with plant pesticides.
And now you're working with begonias, mostly the tuberous types. Do you have a favorite begonia before we move on?
Of course, the tuberous types. My favorite type at the moment is really the Groovy series.
Yeah,
I think that's an awesome plant.
Oh, definitely. Really beautiful blooms and very different style as well. It's quite elegant. So
yes.
Well, let's talk about begonias and where we can plant them. So we touched on that very briefly with Ulrika, but can you give us a bit more info on where you would plant a semperflorens, what a semperflorens looks like, and how a tuberous begonia works? Just talk us through those differences and where you could grow them and how they'll perform for a consumer at home.
Yeah, so like you and Ulrika already mentioned, and there's like over 2,000 different species of begonia. Whoa. So you're going to find a type of begonia for any place you can think of. I mean, of course, at Benary, we not work in 2,000 different species.
Yeah.
But just to give you some examples. So, for example, the Semperflorens type, they are smaller and they do an amazing job if you transplant them directly in your garden.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you're talking about the tuberous types, just to mention here the Non-Stop series or Non-Stop Mocha series, those plants also do an amazing job if you just transplant them in pots, for example. If we come to our hanging items, here we have, for example, the Illumination series that you already mentioned. They do a great job in a hanging basket, and as well as Groovy and Funky. They're also two hanging items. They also look great in baskets. So in general, you're going to find a begonia for any space you can think of. And you have them for beds, for pots, and for hanging baskets, as I mentioned. And if you're looking for an amazing eye catcher, you can use our big begonia. If you put them into a great container, to a big container, and put them on your patio, there will be an amazing eye catcher. They can get sizes up to 80 centimeters.
Definitely. And you don't need many plants in a pot either, do you?
No, you don't need a lot of plants. The plant gets really big.
Because very often I find, especially in the UK, we'll take a container that's perhaps 12 inches across and we'll plant just 3 begonias in there and expect it to fill the pot, and it never does. And I always tell people, plant more plants and you'll get a bigger effect. But with big, you don't need to, because those plants are they're almost like they're on steroids. They're incredible plants.
Yeah, they get big, yeah.
Definitely.
A nice plant.
You mentioned actually non-stops there, which is a tuberous type, so one that you specialize in, but you mentioned the mocha, and mocha is one of my favorites because that is an almost black-leaved begonia, isn't it?
Exactly. The non-stop mocha is the same performance like the general non-stop with the green leaf, a standing item, and the non-stop mocha just comes with a very dark leaf. Amazing looking plant.
And a range of different colors as well.
Exactly.
And I love some of the ways that you guys plant them up with ferns and grasses. It's really, really inspiring how you use those there. But also, I remember from your trials last year, you've got the first of a trailing non-stop, the Joy series. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The non-stop Joy series is basically, it's like a hanging non-stop. So it's like a non-stop that has longer flower stems, so the flowers trail a little bit, and they really form I would nearly say like a round bowl in a hanging basket.
Okay, so that could be a hot shot for the future, right?
We hope so. Yeah, we hope so. We just have a few new colors. Yeah, and let's see what we can do there.
That's good. I think for the UK market, it needs to be a color mix, because people don't tend to grow single colored begonias. When they grow a begonia, they go all out. They have all the colors, all the rainbow colors, and that is the way that it really works. So definitely. So how can we
have some discussions there, and I actually heard that from Dominic as well.
How can we keep our begonias happy in the garden? Feeding, watering, do we need to deadhead them? How can we get the best out of them?
The nice thing with begonias is that you actually don't need to do a lot. So if you plant them into your soil in your garden, you really just need to look that they have enough space. Then just try to not overwater them.
Okay.
If you give them some fertilizer every other week, will also do them well. But that's it pretty much. They even self-cleaning, so it means they drop the dried flowers.
Okay.
So it's real maintenance free.
Yeah, all you need to do is sweep up the old flowers then. You don't need to go around picking them off like a petunia?
No, they're self-cleaning. They drop off by themselves.
Okay, that's cool. And you're obviously specializing in the tuberous type. So these are ones, when people have gone along to the Chelsea Flower Show, they will have seen big displays with exhibition-style begonias, and they're tuberous types. So they're the ones with the big, blousy, unapologetic blooms. And they're extra good value, aren't they? Because we can save those year after year. So how do we save a tuber begonia for the second year?
I mean, like the name said, tuberous begonia means like they form this tuber. And you could pretty much at the end of the season, you can just dig out that bulb and store it into a dry, cool location. And then when the next season starts, you get out your bulb, you transplant it in your garden. And the plant just comes again. Mm-hmm. I mean, of course, here we should mention that the second year, the plant will not be as amazing as the first year when it comes to quality. Uh-huh. So we recommend that you buy a new plant every year. But yeah, they're definitely savable for the next year.
Okay.
The tuberous types.
So for kind of customers who are kind of on a budget, for example, is there a way to make them stronger in the second year? Feed them towards the end of the season, perhaps? Or does the bulb diminish with every year? Because you do see, sometimes we see pictures from customers with tubers that are like this size, 6 inches across. Is that plant getting weaker and weaker each year, or do we need to maintain that with extra feed?
I must honestly say I don't know exactly, but I would assume as long as you feed the plant well throughout the season and install the tuber well, the plant should do quite well the second year.
Okay, that's good to know. Also, if I'm a bit lazy and I don't want to lift the tubers, can I just
buy new ones?
No, but could I just leave them in the pots and put the pot, say, somewhere frost-free? Would it come back, or is it unlikely to?
I mean, I would say if you keep the soil dry and not moist, I would not see why it should not come back.
Okay.
Just try that it doesn't start to rot, then it should be fine.
Yeah, so it's keeping them dry over the winter months is really the key to all of this, isn't it?
Exactly. Good fungus and bacteria away.
And also with begonias, how would you water them? Because they can be a little bit kind of succulent and tender, and too much water is not a good thing. So would you recommend watering them from below, say from a saucer or a tray?
I think it might be a good idea, yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, if you plant them in your garden, that's not an option. Yeah. But I think also watering from below the soil will also do just fine.
Okay. And in terms of feeding, any particular feed, or is some high potash tomato feed good for them?
Any fertilizer will do. Yeah. Don't over-fertilize them. Just give them a little bit of fertilizer every other week. Just a regular fertilizer that you use for any other plant in your house or garden.
And do you grow begonias at home? Which ones do you grow?
Unfortunately, my garden is not that big. But yeah, I have a hanging item once in a while. Right now, actually, I have one of our groovy series hanging on my patio.
Oh, excellent. That's good to know. I guess
you have good supply here at work, so.
But it's also like when you're working with plants all day, you don't necessarily have time to do your garden at home, do you? So I know how it can be. So just to finish off, let's give people a few extra ideas and kind of inspire them to grow begonias in different ways. So how can we plant them up? What sort of plant partners work well? We mentioned grasses very briefly. Any other foliage plants that work with begonias?
Yeah, like you said, like the grasses are a very, very good choice, and because grasses are also maintenance free.
Yeah,
and this combination actually also becomes more and more hip in the recent years. And just one specific example that I like is to use our dark leaf Begonia mocha in orange, and if you put them to some brownish grass, then you really have a great color contrast.
Oh, very nice, definitely.
You were asking. Sorry, Simon.
No, sorry. How about different uses for the begonias? Because the semperflorens types, particularly big, are edible as well, aren't they? So we can use them in the kitchen or to decorate cakes.
Yeah, so that's a very, very good question. They are edible as long as you look that you, of course, get a pesticide-free plant. And otherwise, you can just pick the flowers right from the plant, snack them in your garden, or you can use the flowers to make a salad, put them in cocktails, or garnish some of the dishes with it. Ulrike actually yesterday gave me a nice idea to use the big flowers and to put them into an ice cube, what will make an amazing display in the cocktail glass.
Very nice. Cool. So there's so many different possibilities, not just for how you grow begonias, but also how you can use them indoors in the kitchen. That's really cool. I'm wondering, because I'm always experimenting in crazy ways, like using indoor plants outdoors, outdoor plants indoors. I wonder what begonia I can grow on a windowsill inside. Is that possible? I wonder which one.
Put a semperflorens plant, for example, on the shelf should do just fine.
That might be cool, because I always like to give everybody an option to, engage with plants, even if they haven't got a garden. So, yeah, maybe a cute little semperflorens on the windowsill would work nicely. Cool. Thank you so much, Hannes, for today. Thank you for telling us a little bit more about how to grow begonias, where to plant them, how to get the best out of them. And also thank you to Dominic, who we talked to about the history of the company, and Ulrika, too, who talked us through the breeding process and gave us a few... did she give us any secrets? I'm not sure. I'll have to listen back. But thank you very much for joining us today. And I hope you guys go on to have a good day and find some winners in your begonia breeding today. Thank you very much. See you later, guys.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Richard Chivers. I'm an allotment gardener, and I'm here to answer any of your allotment or grow your own questions. So first up, we've got a question about tomatoes. Tips for growing tomatoes, please. Potting up and pinching out. What does this all mean? I think I should say, first of all, is that I have such an affection for tomatoes, growing your own tomatoes. It was the first crop I ever grew. I grew it in a pot, in a little plastic greenhouse, in a garden in my first house, which was tiny. And they were, and they still are, the best tomatoes I think I have ever tasted in my life. And I think tomatoes are a firm favourite. It's easier if you've got an inside space to grow them in, like a greenhouse or a polytunnel. But let's start with where you start. Sowing your seeds. One of the best bits of advice I can give you about sowing tomato seeds is to not do it too early. I know if you look at some of the packets and you see some of the commercial growers, they're starting their seeds in January, and there's just no need. And I think if you are a allotment gardener or a backyard grower like me and like the majority of us listening to the podcast, don't put yourself in that position, because you don't need to sow tomatoes that early, and they grow very, very quickly, and they are tender plants. And so what you'll find is that if you sow them too early, you can't do anything with them, and they need protection, and it becomes a bit of a juggle in terms of managing them. And the truth is, they don't need to be sown early. So for me, I look at my last frost date, which is not an exact science, but it's about experience or looking at your local area. And so the last frost date for me here in Cardiff, in Wales, is on roughly around the middle of May. So what I'm doing then is timing my tomatoes. It works well for me to make a sowing of the seed in middle of March, and they need heat. They need warm temperatures to get off to a really good start and to maintain that early growth. So I sow them into little modules or little pots in mid-March, and I put them on a heated propagator, keep them warm, water them, and let them go. And mid-March, after a couple of weeks, they're up. And when they're about maybe 3-4 inches, if that, tall, then I prick them out and put them into a slightly bigger pot, maybe 3 or 4 centimetres wide, and keep them in again indoors for a while until they grow a bit further. And then I make what's the final potting on, really, into another pot, maybe, 8 inches or something like that, and keeping them protected. So for me, I can put them in a wooden greenhouse, and I can keep an eye on them in late April, as it is now. And as long as there's no risk of frost overnight, then they're okay. If there is a risk of frost, then you need to cover them up, and you can either put a cloche over them or propagator lids or some plastic, or you can do what I do, which is keep them in a big tray in the greenhouse and then bring them in the evening if there's a risk of frost. Tomatoes are pretty easy to grow. You don't really need to do a lot with them. So when mid-May arrives and I plant them out in the polytunnel, all I'm going to do is plant them straight into a no-dig bed. And if you're growing corn varieties, or indeterminate varieties, as they're called, which are the ones that you will commonly see in greenhouses and polytunnels, and they grow up on a long vine that keeps growing upwards and upwards. You need some kind of support. You can do it with string, or you can do it with bamboo canes, but they do need some kind of support, and you need to tie their stems in to the support as they grow. And you'll find you'll have to do this quite frequently as we leave May and into the summer, because they do grow really quickly. If they're an indeterminate tomatoes or a bush variety, then you don't need to do anything with them. You can just let them grow, and they'll grow outwards and bushier, and they'll set out side shoots, and you get a large harvest all at the same time on bush varieties. Whereas with cordon varieties, you tend to get tomatoes that ripen over a longer period of time, and you can continuously harvest tomatoes. And personally, I prefer cordon varieties. I think they give you a lot of value for your money in terms of the crop that they provide. You don't have to pinch tomatoes out, not in the sense of what is commonly done with lots of flowers and in the vegetable world with chilies. And that pinching out, when we say pinching out, we're usually saying we're pinching off the very tip, the growing tip of the chili plant, for example. Usually when it's about maybe 8 or 9 inches tall, it's got about 2 or 3 sets of true leaves on it. You pinch the growing tip out, and that encourages side shoots to come out. And with chilies, you will get more crop if you pinch out the tips and encourage them to produce more side shoots, and therefore more flowers, and therefore more fruit. But tomatoes don't work like that. You don't need to do that at all. When the only thing that you have to do with tomatoes, which is kind of slightly confused with pinching out, is to pinch out suckers or side shoots. Now, these are little shoots that start to grow out of the cross between the main stem and the leaf stem that comes out to the side. And you will see them, and you will notice them. They're not difficult to spot. They'll grow really, really quickly. Now, we pinch them out because we want the plant, particularly on cordon varieties, to keep growing, keep focusing its energy on that one single growing stem all the way up, and producing trusses of flowers and obviously fruit. That's the best advice. There's no pinching out in the traditional sense with chilies. Just let them grow. Just pinch up the side shoots. Keep watering consistently. You don't have to overwater. You don't underwater. Just make sure they're getting the right amount of water, and depending on the weather conditions. There's a common problem with tomatoes is blossom end rot, and that's if you look at the fruit of your tomato when they're on the plant, they develop a big sort of black spot right at the base of the fruit, and really that's where there's a lack of calcium in the plant. And you don't have to add calcium. You just have to water consistently. It's a watering problem, not a deficiency in the nutrient itself. So that's the key to maintaining good growth on your tomatoes and not developing blossom end rot. That's really it. I don't give any feeds to my plants, and not even tomatoes. No, I don't give any fertilizer at all. You don't need to if they're in the ground. The plants can do that perfectly well by themselves, and enjoy, because they are one of the best crops to grow. If you're lucky enough to have a greenhouse or polytunnel, they're exceptionally easy to grow. If you want to grow them outside, it's quite a bit more difficult, but depends where you are. I struggle with outside tomatoes here in Cardiff. It's too wet, and I find that they just don't ripen in time, or by the time they start to produce fruit and start to ripen, they end up getting blight from being outside. So that's the tips, really. Second question today is about how to grow aubergines. Mine always seem to flower, but not fruit. I think we covered this in a previous episode of the podcast, where someone was having a similar problems with their aubergines, where the flowers would fall off. And I'm assuming this is exactly what's happening in this particular circumstance as well. So I grew aubergines successfully for the first time last year. And when I say successfully, I grew 2 plants and I had a prolific crop of them. Again, it's not to overcomplicate it, because pretty much the plants will grow really successfully. I found anyway, if you just sow at the right time and give them the right conditions to grow in. So in terms of aubergines, I'd sow them in late February, indoors on a heated propagator. And they're tender plants, much like tomatoes and chilies. They need heat to get going. And late February is a good time because they start off a little bit slow and then they can take a little bit longer to produce the fruit. So I would start them a little bit earlier, maybe late February, but no earlier than that, I don't think. So when they grow on, after you've potted them on again, make sure that they're kept warm and there's no risk of frost damage by putting them outside too early. Again, they in the UK especially, they really need to grow under cover. So if you've got something like a polytunnel or a greenhouse, that's the best conditions to grow in. Plant them into a no-dig bed in the polytunnel, as I did, and just water. Now, you don't have to do anything with them, but they do seem to be a plant, in my experience, that are susceptible to shock or anything that causes them stress, rather. Not shock, stress is the word. So temperatures drop in. So if you plant them out too early and the temperatures drop down in the night, if you don't water them consistently, not enough of decent ventilation where they're growing, these common problems that a lot of crops that you would grow indoors in greenhouses are probably susceptible to. So if the plant gets stressed, it's going to drop the flowers, and that's just part of its natural process. So the idea is that you maintain the conditions that it doesn't get stressed. So doing those key things: keep it well watered, keep it warm but not not ridiculously hot, because it can get incredibly hot in the day in summer in the polytunnel, and keep the doors or the vents open on the greenhouse or the polytunnel to allow enough ventilation. That's really it. And that there's no other really complex answer as to why it drops flowers. It's just stressed, and it's your job to make sure that it doesn't get stressed. Hope that helps. Final question for this week is, someone's asked about how to grow basil. Can I grow it outside? Well, I've grown basil a few times over the years, and I've had success in and outside. But it's very dependent on the conditions that you're growing it in. I do struggle with it outside. If it's a particularly drab summer, it doesn't seem to do as well. It seems to really thrive on warm, sunny weather, and therefore growing it, especially in my part of the UK, in the summer months outside is quite difficult. But it's a great plant that you can grow indoors on your windowsill as well. You don't need necessarily an outside space. It will thrive in pots on a sunny windowsill. It's perfect, in fact. I find in the UK to grow it indoors in pots on a sunny windowsill. So if you have a sunny windowsill, do it that way. If you have a polytunnel or greenhouse, it's a great companion plant to grow around the base of tomatoes, and I've grown it successfully like that. But again, it doesn't need a lot. You can if you're growing it indoors, providing there's enough sunlight and warmth, you can pretty much grow it quite a lot through the year. You can sow it early in the year, and you can grow it on a windowsill through spring and summer. Outdoors, again, as long as there's no frost, it will grow happily in a greenhouse or a polytunnel, or even a little cold frame that you can manufacture. And that's really it. And there's some fantastic varieties of basil, like so many herbs. There's so many opportunities. You got, particularly a fan of purple basil. It offers much more of a unique flavour to the basil, and the colour is fantastic if you make pesto with it, which is fantastic as well.
Cobra is the very proud partner of Series 4 of the Plant-Based Podcast, joining in the celebration of plants, gardens and outdoor living. With over 60 models of lawnmowers available in the Cobra range, there's something for every garden. As a special offer for our listeners, Cobra is offering the chance to win exclusive prizes. Head over to cobragarden.co.uk to find out more.
So before we move on to this week's gossip section, we got something really special that we want to tell you about and something that we're experimenting with. There's a new app called Stereo, and it's an audio-only live social platform which allows users to listen and become part of any digital conversation anywhere in the world. And we're hoping that you'll become part of our conversation because on Monday night at 7 p.m, we're actually going to have a chat about begonias and all sorts of other plants. Whether you love them or you hate them, I hope you'll join in.
Absolutely. I can't wait to talk about begonias because I think begonias
They're a great divider of people.
Yeah, that's exactly. So come and join the divided conversation on Stereo Monday night at 7 p.m.
Yeah, so basically Ellen and I will be chatting. You'll see our wonderful avatars that we've made up. I think Ellen's has got facial hair. And we'll be there. And what you can do when you download the app for yourself, you just press the talk button in the center and you can add a voice note into our conversation, and we'll then see what that voice note is and we'll then add you in and then respond to you. So it's a bit of fun. It's very new. We're early adopters to this, but download the Stereo app and we'll be putting the links out on social media so you can join in our conversation.
Always leading the way.
I know. There you go. Monday, 7 p.m. And come and talk begonias with us.
I'll shade my facial hair. See you then.
Our special guests on our podcast gossip today, but not just one guest, we got two for the price of one. And it's the Plant Daddy podcast. Hey guys, how's it going?
How's it going? Hi.
Oh, it's so cool to have you here.
It's a plant podcast mashup.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And where are you? You're over in Seattle, is that right? Yeah.
It's true. Upper kind of Pacific Northwest corner of the United States.
Wow.
Yes.
What time is
it?
Also. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I was going to point out it's morning now. It's morning for us, evening for you, and you'll be able to tell who's a morning person and who's not.
That's a bit like us. You get up first thing in the morning, bright and breezy, and I'm just like, ugh.
That's like Stephen and me.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Sipping coffee.
So anyway, Matt and Steve or Stephen?
Stephen.
Stephen. So Matt and Stephen, welcome to the podcast. Equally, I'm Michael, never Mike.
All right. I'm actually Matthew, very infrequently Matt. So.
Oh, I couldn't see on your Zoom. It only shows me Matt.
It doesn't.
That's good to know, so I can fix that.
I mean, just so you know, I'm Ellen Mary, but you can call me Ellen.
Very nice to meet you officially, Ellen. I love your Instagram. It's so much fun to just kind of see the fun you have on there.
Thanks, Thank you. So I would just love to know where it all began for you two. Like, first of all, with plants, like, how did each of you just begin to love plants? Where did that start before we even get to podcasting?
So I feel like I usually answer this first, so I'll let Matthew this time.
I was just saying, like, I started so much sooner. Maybe it's time for me to go first. When I was, like a toddler, literally, my grandmother bought me a cactus. And so I actually still have this cactus. It's an Echinopsis. And it's been going strong for like 30 years or so. Wow. And both my grandmothers and my mom and my aunt, they all grew plants both indoors and out. And I just always loved them. And so as I grew older, I learned about carnivorous plants were an early fascination of mine. So I grew some Nepenthes when I was really young, some Sarracenia, and then I really got hooked by orchids. And that kind of threw me into a world of tropicals and especially like flowering plants and weird exotic stuff that I wasn't seeing around like the Pacific Northwest corner of the world where I grew up. So it just became this really beautiful kind of connection to nature, and I really appreciate how attractive they are, and it's so much fun to figure out how to grow things. So as I developed and progressed as a plant interested person, that just kind of took a lot of different forms, and now I have over 400 houseplants of all different kinds. And I try to do some outdoor container gardening, but until I actually own some property, I'm not going to be digging in someone else's soil and planting beautiful gardens for future people, unless maybe I'm being selfish, but
for you.
I would love to do that sometime, but not
400 houseplants though, that is a jungle.
Oh my God.
That is a definite jungle.
It definitely takes some management, and I think that I've reached the max number of plants that I can handle in my life right now.
Well, you can never go on holiday.
I don't. No, actually, I do find that it is easy to step away for like a few days at a time. So weekends out of town are great. And if it's anything longer than that, that's why it's good to have good plant friends in the area. Steven and I have actually regularly watched each other's plants while one of us is off somewhere.
To be fair, like that's what happens with us. You were saying with
you're coming next week to look after my plants. I'm coming to look after
his plants next week when he's not here. But that's what happens when you have loads of plants inside or your garden,
and especially seedling stage as well.
Yeah, definitely. But that another guest on the podcast who has the memories of being young with like a family member, like your grandma, like you said. We have so many people who love plants because of when they were a kid, like a memory from when they were young. So that's
there's so many plants that are just purely nostalgic. Like I don't really love African violets, but I grow them because they just remind me of my grandmother. And you know, outdoor fuchsia, the same thing. I love the nostalgia of them.
So Stephen, how about your journey?
It was rather different. For me, I came to it maybe 5 or 6 years ago now, maybe a bit longer. I was looking through pictures in my old phone the other day, which is a total quarantine strange thing to do, right? But I was like, oh, this is actually a little earlier than I thought. I was really very plant blind. I would like I had 1 or 2 plants from IKEA. I would leave on a vacation. I'd be like, oh, I wonder if it's going to survive. You know, that kind of attitude. I lived in Japan after college, and I saw planted aquariums there, which is kind of
like aquascapes.
Exactly. Yeah, just awesome aquascapes there. I got really interested in sort of plants for the first time in that capacity. Then came home here to the US. There's a great aquascaping shop here in Seattle. So I kind of got one, started tinkering, and I'm like, oh, you know, plants. Yeah, there's like beauty and diversity here or something. Then I was friends with Matthew already. I think we had a shopping trip. We picked out a carnivorous plant that he like assured me was very easy. Just leave it outside. Just kind of keep it wet. I was like, you know, okay, sure. Right. Like it was etching things. I think I then got fascinated by that. Like, wow, I'm having this success here. This is a really interesting process. Like this, it caught a hornet. I was like in disbelief. Right. I think it's really, you know, it's cool when that happens for the first time. Had those early successes. Then there's a great plant community here in Seattle where I was meeting people. I went to a shop. I was going to buy another plant, and this person just was talking me up for like 15 or 20 minutes saying, oh yeah, here you can come to this group. It meets right near your house. And I'm like, really? And like, yeah, oh, there's a bunch of free plants there. So kind of got hooked that way. And then it's the slippery slope, right? Where I'm like, you just have easy, like early success like that. And then it becomes this puzzle, right? I like the puzzle aspect of like, oh, I have this plant with, you know, interesting care requirements. Can I do it? Maybe there's no limitation about this. What can I figure out? I like that aspect.
You like the challenge then, definitely. That's really cool.
I'm not so good with that. I like a one-fits-all approach. It's got to be there. It's got to work.
And if it doesn't work, you just bin it.
Which is awful.
That's totally valid. Yeah. So,
yeah. Steven's on one end of that spectrum. You may be somewhere else, and I'm like kind of in the middle. There's plenty of plants that it's like, I've tried and you're done now.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'll give it a go, but then that's enough.
Maidenhair fern?
Maidenhair fern is an absolute diva in my world. I cannot keep them alive.
We both found that if you just keep them like sopping wet all the time, they're actually brilliant houseplants. I have been growing them in like closed glass vessels that have like no drainage of any kind.
Oh, it's closed.
Yeah, it has worked for me personally, and I never thought I'd keep one alive.
So like in a terrarium kind of thing.
Kind of like I know that this is terrible for podcasting But like this is a spathiphyllum, of course. But if you just like put a fern in this, like it's like a terrarium planting method, except that it's like it's not enclosed at all on top. So that's how I've been successful with maidenhairs.
Okay, so you, Michael, you mentioned earlier on about planting into a wine glass. So it's literally, we should
maidenhair into a wine glass. That's a good idea.
I have never been able to keep one alive, basically. So when I see them out and about, I'm so excited to see them, but I just really don't like them.
I guess
that's fair enough.
Plant nemesis, don't they?
That's mine. But at what point did you guys meet and decide to start the podcast? How did that all happen?
I usually answer this, so Matthew, let's see your answer.
Oh, all right. Well, so we met about a decade ago. In fact, it might be a little over a decade by this point. And initially, we just like kind of friends who go get dinner, watch a movie, or go to the cinema or whatever. And as we just continued kind of knowing each other over the years, Stephen was well aware that I was a plant person. Like he mentioned, we went plant shopping. And as he kind of grew his interest a little bit more, like that gave us like a specialized focus of our relationship. And we just kind of reached a point where we decided that we were talking about plants way too much in mixed company and just kind of needed to start a podcast so that our friends suffered less.
Oh, that's cool. But you put so much work into your podcast. Like, I kind of think we've had a podcast with 4 series now, but I feel like we almost like, we put a lot of work in. We sort of throw it together, and sometimes at short notice. But yours seems so well planned, and the information that you put across is just excellent. It really is.
It's slick.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
It's take a lot of work. How often do you release, by the way?
We release weekly, and I'm glad that we look like we have it together because we both work full time. Yeah. Well, like it's purely hobby for us. So, I mean, I admire anybody who takes this much energy because we now know kind of what it takes. We have a lot of fun planning our production schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we put together outlines and we kind of like doing the research about, okay, well, what have been our experiences with this plant? What are people saying? We kind of put it together and try to present something that, will keep your interest through all of the different like botany section, right? Like the soil section. So, yeah.
Yeah. And something that I have really found, I have improved a lot as a houseplant person myself, just over the course of our show.
Just from talking to me.
Yeah, partially, because like every person who grows plants, you don't really need to know the Latin names or the taxonomy. Yeah. You can be successful with plants regardless of how informed you are on all that like superfluous background information. So many people can be kind of a subspecialty focused expert on all kinds of things. And Stephen and I both really, really benefited in our early plant days, and we still continue to, by talking to people who have the experience of things that we don't. So whenever we cover a topic, we try to really pinpoint what the houseplant community online is saying, both like Facebook groups, Instagram. We look and kind of see what like community posts on forums are saying, so that we have a sense of what the challenges are that people are facing, what solutions they might have come up with. And it's been very informative to just kind of understand a lot of this world in a different way than I inherently do myself.
Yeah, I think like that's brilliant about when we do our podcast as well. We're constantly learning. Like I honestly don't think anyone can actually call themselves an expert if you're in horticulture in any way. So, outside, houseplants, whatever. How can you be an expert? Because there's like a million things to learn, and then things change. Like there's new varieties, new technology, more research. Like how can you possibly know it all?
Yeah.
So doing like the podcast, we're constantly learning new stuff, and that's one of the things I absolutely love.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I don't know if it's my chair squeaking. Can you hear that? It's like a constant squeak.
I can't hear anything.
My leg. I want to know a couple of things. Do you ever argue or disagree when you're putting together episodes?
Never.
Yeah, we've never had a disagreement. No.
If only our listeners could see your eyes right now.
Well, I I think that actually we have developed this level of trust in one another that we don't have arguments. We have like content discussions. And
I like that.
Yeah.
And I think, we're both kind of coming from different angles kind of consistently, right? Like I think Matthew, I think about this a lot where you said, you know what, I used to go and I would, consult the encyclopedia. Matthew wants to include a lot. For me, I'm thinking all the time, like I kind of come from this, like maybe this different sort of marketing kind of background where I'm like, you know what, let's distill this to 3 sentences, like all the time.
Yeah.
So, these different angles.
And I'm like, well, we can't explain the whole history of aspidistra in 3 sentences.
So it's like, those are I think the discussions that we have the most.
But the way that
you mentioned aspidistra, that's like one of my favorite plants. You literally cannot kill it.
Oh yeah, no, I love them.
You can't kill it.
Yeah. One of the things that I think, creative conflict or, however you might describe it, what that does for our show, and I think it's one of our strengths, because Stephen has this very practical kind of approach. He likes to be very instructive, very informative, kind of cut to the parts that are like actionable and that help people. Whereas I am much more like, it is so fascinating to me that peace lilies are not like a species found in nature. They are the evolutionary, end result of so many centuries of breeding these plants and like really getting into like these different finite parts that literally do not help you grow anything. But to me, they're the fascinating cornerstones that kind of make something special and interesting. So, we represent some Venn diagram of what plant interested people might have. So
hopefully
it's a fun way for us to kind of like get outside of our own mindset and to kind of create content that maybe reaches more people. And that's, I think, something that has helped us both like put our show together, but also like learn things a little bit better ourselves.
Yeah. What about you two? Was it like arguing in tears just before we got on the call here, or?
Just before we got on the call, we were playing Uno.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think I saw on Instagram that Michael was in a hammock earlier.
Yeah, I was for a while. Yeah, I think we disagree, but we are quite good at like resolving it and kind of seeing the other person's side and coming to some sort of compromise. I think almost. Yeah,
I think so.
Because like if you're working in a partnership, if the other person doesn't agree, then you can't ignore that. You need to work with their disagreement and make it something that you both agree on. You can't just be like, oh no, you disagree, you're not counting.
That's
so
right.
So work for
usually we have the like minor disagreements via WhatsApp, and we always end the conversation with a closed door or a hole, emoji hole, like we're done now, or shut the door.
The woman in the towel. What was that?
So this is really bad. I don't know if I can say why. Because it was referring to you. So the lady in the bath emoji, which really doesn't refer to what I was referring to you as, but it was like a word that begins with S for a female that's getting around a bit.
Oh, I had no idea that's why you were putting that. I thought you meant, chill out.
Wow. Emojis can be hard.
No, it's really loaded.
I was like, just chill out, dude. Like, it's all fine.
Oh my god,
that's funny. I love that.
Something I really want to ask you guys though is, and you don't have to answer. If you don't want to disclose it, then you can just say something fake. But what are your day jobs? Because you don't work in plants in your day jobs, do you? Or do you?
No, not at all. Stephen, do you want to take this one first? I've talked a lot.
Yeah. So for me, I work in data and analytics. It's for it's a medical device startup, but I'm mostly working in like customer behavior kind of data. So looking at what someone does online and like, how do we direct them to buy sooner? Those kind of things for different businesses. Some of it lends itself to the podcast. We're kind of like, is our website popular at all? Or like, what, is the most popular content there? I can kind of look at that stuff with my work skills and help out.
That's cool. So you kind of bring that work set to the podcast. That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'd like, right? But basically, yeah, because
it's nice that he has a profession that he can like bring things into, like help improve what we do as a hobby.
Yeah.
And what about you, though?
I actually do kind of admin and research support for an HIV and AIDS kind of clinical medical setting. We do a very different work now with work from home than we were doing prior, but I'm really looking forward to kind of getting back into a clinic setting and kind of doing my old routine a little bit more.
Haven't we all missed that so much over this past year?
And your plants will be glad to see the back of you because you're perhaps over caring for them while you're there all the time, right?
Well, with 400 of them, they get neglected a surprising amount because
had more time to stay on top of it all.
I'm actually a little worried when I go back to the office. I won't just be able to like wander around in my slippers like, oh, you need to be watered and like do that just like 24/7.
I was going to say it wasn't 400 before quarantine started, so we'll see how this.
It's phone and quarantine.
Well, watch out for giveaways. Right.
I hadn't thought that I needed to ask you this question, but now I really do. Stephen and I have so many more plants now that we have started the podcast because it just encourages us. Have the two of you found that you have way more plants than you would naturally have otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I last counted mine and it was like 130, but this was like last year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But because I do like different TV bits and stuff, there's always like leftover plants. And most of the time, nobody else really wants them because nobody else is really horticultural that works on the shows.
Yeah.
So I've always got so many like samples coming in or a whole box of 20 orchids. And I can give them away to people, but I don't know if I know that many people.
Stephen, I think that we need to do something like that so people are sending us boxes of orchids.
No, we don't. No, that's the point. No, we don't. 400, Matthew. No.
I'll throw away a Rex Begonia for another orchid.
It's a lot. I think actually you've got those. What are those bottles with the solution in with a plant in on your bar?
Oh, the everlasting terrariums.
Yeah. You said you'd give me one of those.
Oh, yes. You can take one. Yeah.
I just don't want you to forget that.
Forget. There's a maidenhair fern in there, and it's
nice. It'll never die.
If you're ready emotionally, right, we can try to help you with our tips. So,
Can you do an episode that's solely for the maidenhair fern?
We actually did.
I didn't quite remember. I was like,
I'm just going to quickly look up what number to direct you to.
Please tell me, because I honestly think I'm gonna listen to that episode, and if that's inspired me, you will see a maidenhair fern on my Instagram.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite things that we have done a couple of times, it's episode 64. Episode 64 about maidenhair ferns.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But
so many episodes.
Yeah, we just released episode 90. So yeah, we're kind of getting up there. But we have had, Stephen and I both have grown some plants that have presented challenges. Like I've always struggled with keeping alocasia with lots of leaves or with maidenhair ferns alive. And so we've kind of like done these weird little like DIY project experiment things to see how we could actually grow them happily and keep them alive, make them look the way that we want long term. And so being able to share some of these things, it has been one of my absolute favorite and most rewarding parts of the show is then seeing like other people on Instagram using those tips and finding their own successes. It is the most rewarding feeling that we could possibly have from this. So if you can learn to grow a maidenhair fern well, it'll make me so happy.
I've tried. If you can change that, then I'll love you forever. There is another one.
That one.
This crazy plant is a calathea or calathea, however you want to pronounce it. So that's network.
Yeah.
I mean, the leaf pattern is absolutely stunning. It reminds me of the Matrix. And I've got a couple of these at home, but they are like a nightmare here. I don't know if it's in the UK, perhaps in our climate, but they are so hard to just keep, like, they survive, but they just always look so raggedy here, you know?
Yeah. I actually have that same plant, and it was brilliant and gorgeous and so lush, and it never looked brown or crispy in my old apartment. And then I moved at the end of the summer, and this new space is better for the majority of my plants, but not that one. It looks, I would be happy if mine looked like that, because right now it's just kind of in a sad little corner.
I was going to ask about Matthew's, but then I was like, I haven't seen of it or heard of it.
It would have been on the Instagram if it was anything photo presentable.
Oh my God.
That's really funny. But what about outdoor gardening? Do you do any outside, or is it just all houseplants for both of you?
Well, Steven has a balcony of plants.
Yeah, I have a balcony space that's pretty nice, but I don't know. I sort of started all of my hobby indoors. So I'm one of those people who I'm kind of used to having a grow light and having my perfect soil and my, temperature that I understand, 24 hours. So my outdoor stuff it's carnivorous plants in pots.
Nice.
I have some strange succulents that, I will learn, they're hardy here. Like, that's kind of my approach to outdoor, right? It's not like, what do people grow around here? It's like, I'll learn something is hardy here. And I'm like, bonus. Very turned around, I think. Maybe if I had a yard, it would be different. But the balcony, that's kind of how I treat it.
Sure. What about you, Matthew?
Yeah. I benefit from having my mom's garden that I can play in. So she and I re-landscape
around here.
Yeah. So I'm very familiar with our climate. We're USDA hardiness zone 8B, which we're surprisingly warm over the winters for how north we are. So we can grow a lot of things that are a little bit too frost sensitive for the majority of kind of surrounding areas.
Yeah, and Matthew, I was just gonna say, right, like, we can grow a lot of the stuff that is good for the UK climate. So we'll look, I think, what is there that it's like an RHS list or something of like approved plants or something like that, right?
It's it's AGM approved kind of thing. Yeah,
that's actually a great list for our climate often. So it's kind of it's like a hack. We can see, that will do well here anyway.
Yeah, but I like a combination of like the cold seasonal plants like peonies, lilacs, because I absolutely love a fragrant flower, and peonies are just my favorite. So I've tried growing those in pots. They do not love being in pots. So all of the peonies that I used to grow are now in my mom's garden, doing much better. I do have 2 small woodland varieties that are just starting to kind of sprout out and produce leaves right now. But I love kind of trying to be a little bit risky with like growing plants that are a little too warm, or like that want too long of a growing season compared to what we have. So I have a bunch of citrus and figs and gardenias that I grow.
And sometimes I babysit them sometimes. And then I'll be like, is this doing okay? Right?
How are they doing?
Well, I never get any fruit on my citrus. The figs will sometimes produce a strong spring breba crop, but I never get a fall crop. They don't ripen. And the gardenias actually are brilliant. I think that they're a marvelous plant, and they're terrible indoors. So I love that I can grow them outside year round.
And the fragrance is stunning as well.
It's my favorite floral fragrance. I will buy them disposably, and I don't do that for very many plants.
This is how the flower looks. It's like porcelain. It's just
they absolutely look like those little porcelain figures that would be on the top of like candy dishes and stuff.
Yeah, they do look like that. Really pretty. You were saying about having your balcony. Part of the year I live in North Carolina in Charlotte, and we have a balcony, and obviously we're in zone 7A, and I had no idea how interchangeable the weather would be within the course of like 1 hour. So it's like, I'm going, I'm going to grow this and I'm going to grow this. But we're on an exposed balcony at the top of the building. And it's like, I have learned so much about what I can and can't grow through so many mistakes that I've made up there. But it never ceases to amaze me how resilient plants are. I know we're on outside plants now, but in the morning, it's foggy and cold. An hour later, it's ridiculously hot. And an hour later, it's snowing. And then an hour later, it's sunny. And then later on, there's a hurricane coming, and all the warnings are coming on your phone. Tornado alert. And I'm like, what's going on? I was just sitting on the balcony. The daffodils are looking great. And then the next one.
How are you supposed to dress for weather like that?
That's so true. I have no idea.
I thought England was back forever.
Yeah. Crazy until it gets to summer, and then of course it's insanely hot and humid. And at this time of year, it's just so weird. It's so crazy. But I've learned a lot from that, and so many plants are incredibly resilient to the changing weather.
Well, I guess they've had many years to adjust themselves.
True.
I'm always amazed at the stuff that blooms over the winter. Like I have a Daphne odora that just it just finished blooming. It is marvelous. It's one of the best things about winter. I have some sweet violets that are in full bloom right now. It's just really charming to have those things that kind of add some joy to a season that is otherwise like dead and gray.
Yeah, that's very true. I often find some of the winter plants are some of the most fragrant, and it might be because there's not else much around, so you smell it more. But
complimented my driveway. I've got a Daphne by my front door.
I could smell it when I pulled up. Yeah, definitely.
They were planted all around the university that I went to, and so late winter, you're just kind of walking through campus. You don't even see them, but it's just like someone's shattered a perfume bottle somewhere. Yeah.
So I was thinking, like, before we finish up, if you could each perhaps give us like your number one top houseplant tip that isn't don't overwater.
It wasn't going to be that. Everyone says that.
Exactly.
I know what mine is, though. So, Stephen, do you want to go first, or do you need to think?
Well, yeah. So, this is a morning pop quiz. Okay. Call that out. I would say, though, if you open and maybe you know this one, Michael, because I feel like we've discussed this before, but if you open up your windows at night, let some of that cold air in. So many plants benefit from like a cool period at night. If you can little temperature change, it can help flowering. It can help, a lot of like sometimes plants will get kind of too consistently hot. I think stuff I grow, that's a big factor. A lot of carnivorous plants like that, but also a lot of orchids too. Like that can help with flowering, right? I think a lot of benefit from that. It's an easy
good point. Yeah,
that's a really good tip.
Nice. Yeah,
I like that. Yeah, because actually sometimes indoors it gets really, really warm, and we don't think to open our windows all of the time.
And indoors is not real air either, is it?
No,
that's completely artificial air.
But you know what I mean?
Well, Stephen kind of turned me on to this, and it made a lot of sense when I thought about it, because we call like any leafy plant like a tropical, but many of them are actually subtropical, and quite a lot of them can be grown outdoors in climates that are not much warmer than us. So it makes total sense. Like, oh, don't ever let your monstera get below 60 degrees. No, like they can actually handle like down to the high 30s, I believe. Yeah. So like there are some plants that you'll definitely see that benefit. And I have seen that. The house that I'm in now consistently gets into the low 60s at night, which what is that, like 20, 19? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm gonna tell you that because I want to.
Yeah, but like my house gets cold enough that I think that I've started to see some plants like growing more vigorously because they're getting those cold nights. And then I crank up the heat for the day when it's that cold. But
it's like 17-ish degrees, 17, 18 degrees kind of thing.
Yeah, so nothing crazy, but just a little bit. That drop can help, I think.
I like that. That's a really, really good tip.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that
Matthew needs to give us one.
Yeah. I think that the number one thing that people can do to be better at plants is really putting them in brighter light than they think is necessary. I think that like we look at a space and our mammal eyes that adjusts for light levels are like, yeah, that's bright enough. I'll put a jade plant or an echeveria there. It's not going to really thrive as well. And so because we're such poor perceptors of the quality of light, like just with our own eyes, many plants are growing in conditions that are way quieter, way darker than they would actually prefer. And one of our favorite adages is like, the darkest shade outside is still brighter than the brightest shade inside, or something to those effects. So one of my early struggles was putting plants where I thought that they were like attractive and where they would look nice, but they would just gradually fizzle out and die because they had enough light that I could see them, but not enough that they could photosynthesize. So I have started putting everything towards what I perceive as like the higher light limits. And they are thriving so much more. They use water more consistently, so you don't have to worry about overwatering as much. You don't have to worry about stodgy soils if they're like actively using it. It's been like the number one thing that I've kind of benefited my plants.
Very good tips.
Like that. But equally, like something that wants bright indirect light is, you know, a lot of people won't be able to tell what that is, and they'll probably put it on a windowsill, whereas bright light, that's not bright indirect light.
Yeah, and I think that you need to kind of figure out what your own climate and what the sun in your climate is doing, because here in Seattle, there are many plants that we'll see, like all the care instructions online might be like protect from sun, never put it in sun. That's not really applicable to us here.
Yeah,
whereas
we're so far north, right? And then maybe the directions will be they'll be talking about Florida all the way up here. Maybe on the side of caution. So for us, we can kind of adjust for more. So maybe think about your latitude and where.
It's kind of the way that like growers in Arizona, like hot, dry climates, might tell people like, you know, this plant is great for full sun, but you can't do that in this climate. You have to put it in a spot where it only gets a little bit of sun in the morning or afternoon because it'll scorch up and burn. So kind of like learning what your sun is doing and then just making sure that you're planning accordingly for the plants that you're trying to grow in it.
So kind of like understanding your own environment, which is much like an outside garden as well. Like, you know, when you're gardening houseplants inside, it's a similar thing, you know?
Yeah, that's really, really interesting tips there, guys.
Thank you. We've not had those tips before. The water one always comes up first.
It's the most relevant for most people.
Yeah, true. And it's the easiest one to say. Also, you know, when you want to move on from a conversation because someone's asking you about plants and you're like, not now, but just stop watering them so much.
Stephen did recently read a really fantastic tip for how to avoid overwatering your plants. Do you remember what that was, Stephen?
No. What was it? Well, give me a tip or give me a hint.
It was when we were preparing for the Florida Ghost episode.
Oh, yeah. Okay, this was helpful. I think I read, because there's all sorts of articles online of varying qualities, we'll say, right? And I think this one was something like, during summer, water twice a week. During the winter, water 3 times the whole winter. Something like that, right? Like there's tough, not very helpful information out there, right, where someone's trying to make it easy. I mean, I feel like that's probably going to frustrate so many people who are new to plants looking for
panic more.
But then they added in the only way to avoid overwatering is to water your plant less. It's like, thanks.
Okay.
Super useful.
And you would literally read that and be like, what does that even mean? Like, what does that mean?
I try to read this stuff from the perspective of someone who hasn't been doing this for 30 years and, started a podcast about it. And I don't know what I would do with that information.
People need plant podcasters like us, right? So
absolutely.
We're teaching people.
You are teaching people. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast today.
Thank you for having us.
For listeners at home, it's the Plant Daddy podcast.
Well, you've done,
check them out.
The same things happened to us last week. We planned to do a gossip, and then we end up talking so long that it then becomes a main episode.
I'm so sorry. We talk a lot.
Oh, no, it's good.
You might be promoted yet. Okay, let us know. That was really cool, guys.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to chat with you and see you, like, for real. I know it's like via Zoom and across the ocean, but still.
This is real now. People,
Just so you know, Michael's stroking your beard right now.
Just touching the screen.
He's stroking your beard.
All right.
Oh, no worries. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure.
And lovely chatting.
And happy houseplant loving, gardening, whatever.
Thank you. Good luck with your maiden hair burns.
I need to work on that. But thank you so much.
The music for the Plant-Based podcast is part of the song Grow by Mikey James, and our editor is Gareth Patch of Semi Echo.